3 weeks from today is Easter, which means that we are now in the season of Lent in mainline Christianity. Lent is the time of the lead up to the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus. And that's actually what for the past few weeks we've been leading up to, although I haven't explicitly mentioned it, though. But it is leading up to that. Now last week we talked about our pre-existing beliefs and how they affect the way we look at things in the Bible, how we interpret the Bible. That is our pre-existing beliefs, not only about what we've heard in the past about Christianity, but also our pre-existing beliefs about how the world works. We come to the New Testament with ideas already in our mind, and we interpret the Scripture through that lens. You can think of our pre-existing beliefs as a pair of reading glasses. And you put on this pair of reading glasses, that represents what you already believe and what you've been told about Christianity, and what you believe about the world and how it works. If you go to open up your Bible, you put on these reading glasses, you see the Bible through your pre-existing beliefs. That's very important to realize. There's a lot of people who do not believe they do that. Now, talking about the Bible, though, if you look in the New Testament only about that much of your Bible. You know, like you go to the Bible and open up where Matthew is and look to see the rest of the Bible, it's about that much out of that much. So the New Testament is short. There's not a lot to it. But yet it talks about a whole lot of different things. And since it crams so much into a tiny little space, there's a lot of stuff in there that's just mentioned, more or less. It doesn't go into a lot of detail on things. And that's one reason why there's so many different versions of Christianity developed over the years. So many different beliefs. There's a lot in the New Testament that's not explained. And so it's very easy to go in there and pull out 2 or 3 verses, put your own spin on it, and come up with a new version of Christianity. And that's what many people have done. And so the way all these versions of Christianity are hatched is that somebody latches on to a handful of verses, puts their interpretation on, and then have a new version of Christianity. All the different denominations we're familiar with started that way. The Presbyterian denomination started when people pulled out 2 or 3 little verses, interpreted them in a certain way, and then went back and reinterpreted the whole Bible to fit with that. The Methodist Church started the same way. People picked out a few little verses, interpreted them in a certain way, then went back and reinterpreted the Bible to support that. Baptists did the same. Lutherans did the same. Catholics did the same. All the different versions of Christianity, that's how they were hatched. Handful of verses, put your spin on it, then put that spin on the rest of the Bible, and you've got a denomination. Now see, it's not only the denominations that do this though. Fads and trends in Christianity have done that too. A good example, you can tell our age, from this, comes from the Gospel of John, where Jesus talking to Nicodemus, you must be born again. Now that was picked up by some forms of evangelical Christianity, and that born again movement became a major movement. And we're all old enough to remember that. Have you been born again? You remember that back in the 60s and 70s and 80s? It got so popular that I remember that former President Jimmy Carter, back, in the 70s, said, I've been born again. And that made the news. That was a big thing back then, being born again. The question back then wasn't so much, are you a Christian? Are you a follower of Jesus? Do you trust in Jesus? It was, but have you been born again? I've heard preachers say that before. Oh, sure, you come to church. Oh, sure, you do this. Oh, sure, you pray. Oh, sure, but have you been born again? So being born again was a big thing back then. That little thing lifted right out. it created a movement that lasted for decades. So most versions of Christianity are like that. But if we're going to be faithful to the gospel witness, we don't need to be basing our faith on a few cut-out verses with a certain spin put on it. We really need to go to the New Testament with a magnifying glass and see if we can determine some of the very basic foundational beliefs behind it. We don't want to be misled by the spin doctors and the denominations that take 5 verses and spin that into a whole denomination. Ideally, we need to go back as far as we can in ancient Christianity and see if we can dig behind the scenes there and find out what they were talking about. It's really impossible to do that precisely given the paucity of things that have survived, but surprisingly we can do it more than we might think. And one way to do it, if you see something mentioned in the New Testament over and over again, even if they don't stop and write 5 chapters explaining it, but if you see something mentioned in different parts of the New Testament over and over again, we would not be wrong in concluding that we have stumbled upon a basic foundational belief in Christianity. So what I wanted to talk about today is mentioned several times in New Testament writings. It is ignored, though, or explained away by most of organized Christianity, and yet it is clearly stated in the New Testament, and it comes straight from the mouth of Jesus also. This is a concept that has profound implications, not only for how we look at things, but how we live our lives. So I'm going to read you several different passages where this concept is mentioned. The first 3 are the words of Jesus, the rest are other New Testament authors. Now is the judgment of this world. The ruler of this world will be cast out. I will no longer talk much with you, for the ruler of this world is coming. He has nothing in me. The ruler of this world is judged. Then the devil, taking Jesus up on a high mountain, showed him all the kingdoms of the world in a moment of time. And the devil said, all this authority I will give you and their glory, for it has been delivered to me, and I give it to whomever I wish. The devil took Jesus up on an exceedingly high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world and their glory, and said, all these things I will give you if you will fall down and worship me. The whole world lies under the power of the wicked one, but he who is in you is greater than he who is in the world. The prince of the power of the air. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rulers of the darkness of this age, against spiritual hosts of wickedness in the heavens, whose minds the God of this age has blinded, who do not believe, lest the light of the glory of the gospel of Christ, who is the image of God, should shine on them. Now those passages, in one way or another, all express the idea that Satan, the devil, evil, is the ruler of this world and is in control of things in this world. That is something that flies in the face of what we have been taught, and it's something that most Christians cannot fathom. They've been told all their lives that God is in control, that God rules the world, that God pulls all the strings, and that God controls everything. The idea that Satan rules the world doesn't fit with that, In fact, it is in direct opposition to that. What do we do then with these passages, even from Jesus himself, who says that Satan is the god of this world? Satan is the prince, the ruler is what it really means, of this world. I think sometimes the Bible translations that translate that prince of this world instead of the literal ruler of this world are doing it on purpose because they can't bring themselves to say it, that Satan is the ruler of this world. Now, so Christians see this. What do we do with this? Well, we've got to find a middle ground. We know that God's in control of everything. We know that. How do I know that? Because Dr. So-and-so said that. I heard that on radio last week. So we've got to find a middle ground. So what do? Okay. We know that God's in control of everything. So if Satan's in control, that must mean that God let him be in control. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. God let him be in control. It's got to be what it is. And then God's hovering right there over him all the time, keeping him in check. Not letting him do too much. Not letting him do too much. You see. Where is that stated in the Bible? Nowhere. But people create it. They fabricate it. Why? Because it's necessary for them to maintain a belief that God is in control. You see, the image that so many Christians have been taught to have of God is that God is in control. He's pulling all the strings. And if that's not true, their whole belief system comes down just like popping a balloon. And that's why they'll go to whatever lengths they have to go to in a desperate attempt to make it not so. No matter how people might contort things, though, the fact remains that even from the mouth of Jesus himself, we have it that Satan is the ruler of the world. So what is the world? Literally, that word is cosmos. Cosmos is everything. Go out and look around, up in the sky, everything. Everything you see is the cosmos. It is the entire created order. Now here again, you'll hear Christians trying to get around this concept of Satan being in control of the world. And they'll say, well, you know what it really means when it's talking about the world is the back alleys of sin, the gambling places, the bars and nightclubs, prostitution, drugs, sex trafficking, pornography, other religions, stuff like that. The back alleys of sin is what the Bible's talking about when it talks about the world, but that is just simply not true. That's not true. The world is cosmos. It's everything. There's no way to wiggle out of this. No way. The New Testament contains this concept numerous times, that the world is under the control of Satan. The world is the realm of Satan. And it's not just talking about spiritual things, it's talking about the cosmos. How is that so? We do not know. We do not know. It doesn't get explained, but it is clearly stated. When we look out into the world and want to see who's behind what's going on in the world, we know who's behind it, who's in control. And really, it's not that hard to see that, is it? Look at how nature works. On the surface, nature is beautiful. A green meadow, trees, a brook flowing, birds singing. But that's deceptive. Wait until the rabbit comes running down through there, running for its life, and the fox grabs it. You hear the rabbit scream. And then the fox eats it up, kills it. You see, one time years ago, I was standing outside, and there was a tree right there, and there was a bluebird flying out of that tree, and a hawk came from way over here and grabbed that bird. Just grabbed it. And as the hawk flew off of that bird, I could hear the bird. That's nature. That's how nature works. When we were in Decatur, there was a cat somebody had down there. And the apartments at the seminary, they had like patios at the back. And I was out there one day and somebody had a cat out there, and the cat had caught a mouse. Have you ever seen a cat with a mouse? I mean, this little mouse, I don't like mice. And you know, we catch them and kill them, but I don't do it for fun. I mean, you know. But anyway, this cat had caught this mouse up there. And the little mouse was laying there, and it would try crawling away, then the cat would pick it up and throw it. And it would claw it. And the little mouse was sitting there bleeding and all carrying on and squeaking and carrying on. And the cat just kept at it and kept throwing, just torturing it to death. That's nature. You see, if you're an animal in the wild, chances are your life will end in excruciating pain in the jaws of a predator as you are ripped apart. It is something that we would think of to be reserved for a horror movie, but that's the way life is in nature. It's that way on the insect world too. I can't stand spiders. They're sneaky, and I can't stand them. I don't like stink bugs either. However, I was out there one day and I saw a stink bug flying to a spider web. And here comes this spider out, you know. And I thought, you've made a mistake today. So I squashed the spider. But you just think if you're a stink bug and you fly into this spider's nest and you see this thing coming at you with these big fangs. What is that? That's like a horror movie. It's like a horror movie. Nature is cruel, and nature sustains itself on cruelty, on death, on fear, and on suffering, and on pain. Is it hard then when you look to see how nature works to imagine Satan being in control of the world? Look at human life. Forget the injustices and suffering caused by things that other people do to each other, and just look at the suffering caused by nature. You age. As you age, you get less and less able to do things. And look at how life ends. Maybe you'll get lucky like some people and just fall over of a heart attack or something when you're all right. I hope you do. But go to the hospital and look at the people laying there. Go to the nursing homes and look at people laying there for years and years and years. Go to hospice and look at the shape people get into. And when you get to be our age, you really don't worry that much about being dead. I'm not afraid to die. I just worry about what I'm going to have to go through before I die. What kind of suffering? You know, am I going to lay there for 5 years somewhere in pain and not be able to move or something? Who knows? You know, who knows? So that's why there's a twinge of sadness to all of life. We know the good times will end. They're limited. We're going to have to wait until later to have good things that will last. The good does not come here and last. So when you look at that, it's not hard to see Satan being in control. Look at it. So that's nature. When you look at nature at how cruel it is, it's not hard to see Satan as being in control. So let's leave nature behind and look at people. Look at the world we live in. It's a world filled with hate, arrogance, selfishness, lying, fussing, self-righteousness, uncaring, injustice, and just plain bad. Is that not a description of Satan? Is that not what Satan would like to see? Think about what's going on everywhere in the world today. Everywhere in the world. It's the same thing over and over again, isn't it? The actors change, the faces change, the rhetoric changes, but we see the same things over and over again. And try as we might, we cannot change it. Oh, we may think we can change it. Oh yeah, we've changed it this time. Yeah, we've changed it this time. But every time we think we have changed it, things go right back to the same old pattern again. Have you ever noticed that? Every time we think we have changed it, things go back to the same pattern. I thought not long ago. It's 2003 all over again. It's 1965 all over again. It's a vicious cycle that repeats itself over and over and over and over again. Looking at it that way, it's not hard to see Satan in control. Now last week we talked about how we could create the kind of world we'd like to live in, a world of pleasantness, of caring, of love, of happiness, of peace, of getting along. The world we'd all like to live in. But it's not going to happen. Why? Because Satan is the ruler of this world and he's not going to let it happen. Now the word that most Bible translations translate as church is actually a Greek word that means called out. Those called out. This word is applied in the New Testament to Christians. Those called out of the world. That's the literal meaning of the word. We are called out of the world. Why in the world would Christians be called out of the world? We have indications from things that have survived from ancient Christianity that that's exactly how at least some of the ancient Christians saw themselves. They detached. In our reading at the end of the service today, we'll hear how Christians were seen in the first century as people who lived outside in their own world. Again, don't make the mistake of thinking that when the Bible says world, it means the back alleys of sin. The world is the world, literally. I know that flies in the face of what we've been taught. Institutional Christianity tells us it's okay to be part of the world. You can be part of the world. You can immerse yourself in the world if you just follow a certain moral code. If you don't have sex, unless it's with certain people under certain conditions, if you don't break into houses and steal people's television, if you don't knock somebody's teeth out if they push in front of you lying at the grocery store, if you don't go to the casino in Kings Mountain, if you don't smoke, drink, or use marijuana, if you don't look at Playboy magazines and don't look at pornography on the internet, if you don't dance, play cards, or listen to hard rock music, and if you are good, upstanding citizens and work hard and save your money and get ahead in life and maybe give a little of your pocket change to poor people, if you follow those rules, you can be in the world all you want to and be okay. You can immerse yourself in the world as long as you avoid whatever the little version of Christianity you like tells you of the sin list that you have to avoid. You can be part of the world as much as you want to as long as you follow this little tiny list of certain moral rules. Why are you doing it? Isn't that what we've been told? Yes. But listen to this. This is from the New Testament. If anyone loves the world, the love of the Father is not in him. Friendship with the world is enmity with God. Set your mind on things above, not on things on the earth. You are not of the world. There's no doubt that we find the strain of thought throughout the New Testament that tells us we are called out of the world to stand back. Get out of it. Hold yourself apart from it. Distance yourself from it. I've tried to say in here before that the only real difference between many Christians' lives and non-Christian lives is the fact that the Christians attend church or go to some kind of Bible study or something and avoid doing certain sins. But from the way they live their daily lives, you'd be hard-pressed to tell the difference between a Christian and a non-Christian, and that is not what Christianity is. We are supposed to be marching to the beat of a different drum. We are supposed to live unencumbered and unattached. We back off. We are at a distance. We're just observers passing through. We see what's going on, but it's not us, it's somebody else. We belong somewhere else. This is foreign to us. We're part of something else. There used to be a comedian back in the 70s or 80s or so who sang a song, "Would Jesus wear a Rolex on his television show?" He was making fun of the TV preachers, who raked in the money and lived in high style. But when we hear a song like that, we shouldn't be smug and apply it only to TV preachers. I think about stuff like that often. I'm not trying to toot my own horn here, but one that might make sacrifices to do this. We could have stayed within organized Christianity, had a good salary, all kinds of benefits, a good retirement. Maybe a house at the beach, like a lot of retired preachers have. I know some of them have them both at the beach and in the mountains. Jesus pays well if you're in one of the major denominations. But you know, we knew we were called to march to the beat of a different drum. And we knew we had to follow where our consciences led us. And that there were things that we could not in good conscience be involved in. And we decided we had to dissociate ourselves from those. It was a sacrifice. But we had to follow where we thought God was leading us, and we don't regret it. It's what we wanted to do. And we've been greatly blessed by doing it. And in some ways, we don't want to give up. We're entering into new avenues of ministry even now. And there were other times in our lives when we had to stand for what we felt was right, when the stakes were high. I'm not holding ourselves up as examples. I'm not saying we're better than anybody else. But I'm saying that we have at a cost to us chosen to withdraw, to back off, and to follow not the world, but where we thought God was leading us. Why? We are not of the world. We are not of the world. The world is the domain of Satan. And so as we move on towards Good Friday and Easter, we see why all that was necessary, huh? Because Satan is the ruler of this world.